Hello guys, what is up? I am going to add Manny onto here. So just 1 second, and I'm so excited. Slightly disturbed. You're so awesome.
Hey, what's going on?
Manny!
I'm good. How are you?
Not much. How are you? Good, good. Thank you everyone for joining in. This is going to be so much fun. So Manny,
Uh,
it's so weird to see your face like actually live. He is an athletic trainer and he's basically worked with pretty much every different sport. I mean, you've covered football, baseball, you did hockey, um, and am I missing anything? Basketball, and then you did the WNBA. We did the 2020 WNBA bubble together, and that's kind of how we know each other, which was an experience in itself. So, thank you for joining. Do you want to kind of expand a little bit on your experience and what you have been up to since we've
awesome.
last seen each
Yeah,
other?
sure. So obviously we met during our time in 20 in the WNBA bubble in Bradenton. So I remember that was during COVID, and we're both looking for jobs. So we both ran into each other at that point. At that time, I was working with the New York Yankees. I was there for 4.5, 5 years until COVID hit, and then we got into the bubble. I was working that just on the side when baseball went down. And then ever since then, honestly, it's just been a big, long journey back into professional sports. I actually at that time, I left the Yankees after following the bubble. So eventually just started working back and forth and kept on grinding and found myself back into professional football.
Did you did you do any other bubbles or no? You did the WNBA bubble and then like right afterwards, did you work with any other teams in a similar
That's the
situation
only one
or
I
was that
did.
the
I
only
was
one you
actually
did?
looking at the Big East bubble, or the one that you were working up.
Oh my God, I wish you would have done that. Oh my gosh, I love the
Yeah, I was definitely
East.
looking at
They're
that one
so
at the time, but
awesome.
then I went back, I was running a business for a little while. I did that for about 7 months, and then it was an
What
athletic
was the
training business that did
business?
different kind of events on the weekends for like showcases for soccer, baseball, a lot of the
Yeah.
stuff that was at IMG Academy as well. And along with that, it was
Okay.
just like a lot of events there. Then eventually just went back to the high school and just started networking and ended up back here in the XFL about 2.5, 3 years later.
Which is so amazing. Everyone who's just joining on, I don't want to say damn you, JJ, Michael Brown, Kai
I
Ozoa.
think
Kai
that's my guy.
Ozoa?
I think
Is
that's
that, who's that?
my
Hey, guy. Um, so he's an athletic trainer, Manny's an athletic trainer, and I think like probably the best place to start is I got a lot of questions. Um, Basically, the way that the question was proposed was that if you're a personal trainer, and to be totally honest, before I was a nurse practitioner, I had never really worked with athletic trainers. Like I worked in a hospital as a nurse, and then when I became a nurse practitioner, I worked in sports med ortho, and that was like my first kind of, initial start with everything. So can you explain a little bit more about
Sure.
like what is an athletic trainer?
So differences in general. An athletic trainer is a licensed, certified, board of certification certified healthcare professional. So it's strictly for first aid responding, working with athletes. It branches off into different kind of um, aspects of sports medicine, but it's not really athletic training in my opinion. It's more like athletic therapy. So we do a lot of proactive things to keep athletes participating at a high level to work on the fields or stay on the field versus a personal trainer. For that kind of aspect, I believe, in my opinion, it's a little bit more generic in like overall health and wellness, whereas athletic training is specified specifically for rehab, injury prevention, orthopedic diagnostics, working with first aid, being a first responder. There's a bunch of different kind of hats that we wear. So it's a very highly specialized form of healthcare.
Yeah, yeah. I can see like the way that you're explaining it. You're like, okay, what is it that I do? It's like a million things that you do. And I think that was like, I had worked with an athletic trainer at my first practice as a sports med nurse practitioner, but like being in the bubble with you guys was like my real experience about like what you guys actually do. And the list is so incredibly long. I mean, you guys had like each player memorized in terms of like what are their strengths, their weaknesses, what you guys are working on, past injuries, past medical history, medications that you guys need, different follow-up visits in terms of what you guys are supposed to do for them. And then in addition to that, like, you know, during the WNBA, we're really trying to limit exposure during COVID at that time. So you guys handled a lot of the therapy needs as well. So for a bunch of different athletes, like you guys do like manual kind of treatments onto patients. So sometimes that's massage and you guys set up like the cold therapy and like you guys kind of get them all prepped and ready for whatever game that they're playing, whatever sport it is, keep them well conditioned as well. And then you guys help them recover. So it's a lot. Like it's really, I mean, a full-time job is not a description of it, in my opinion. Like you guys work night and day, especially during the season. It's literally nonstop. I mean, it's just constant.
No,
Would you
mean, a
disagree
lot of
or
that was
no?
pretty spot on. You know, I think a big thing about athletic training in general is that it's not your traditional 8 to 5 kind of job. You know, whatever the sports schedule is or the sport environment that you're working with, like when the athletes are there, like you are there, if not a little bit longer. But I would say from a fulfillment standpoint, it's definitely one of the hardest working, rewarding, you know, professions you could be a part of. That's for sure.
Right. I am CXC 17. Are you allowed to give athletes painkillers? So that's a good question. I guess like non-narcotic, you know, versus narcotic. I don't know
As
how you guys
athletic
handle
trainers,
that.
we're not allowed to prescribe, but we're allowed to dispense. So, in regards for over the counter,
Mhm.
so it'd be Advil, Tylenol, your basic painkillers, you're able to dispense that, you know, at like the daily dose. In regards for prescription medicines, yes, we monitor and communicate prescriptions from doctors who go over evaluations with athletes specifically for them. We make sure that they follow the doctor's orders as prescribed because we are the ones that are constantly working with them every day. But we do not prescribe narcotics or anything like that. We just work underneath the guidance of the orthopedic physician.
Mhm. And so I guess like another good question, do you
For
guys give injections or no? Because like Toradol for like a pain medication, I don't know if you guys do those on when you're on the road or if you guys only just like oral
for those kind
medications.
of medications, they'll still run underneath like the direction of the orthopedic physician. So anything that goes like that's obviously that goes more into the hospital setting, but any kind of injections or intubations or more invasive kind of procedures, that still follows underneath the direction of the orthopedic physician. They are the ones that are responsible for um, those medications.
Okay, very cool. So I guess like we can start from the beginning in terms of your background, because in my opinion, and I don't know if you think of this too, like I can't really remember a time where athletic training was like really promoted in high school or college. So like how did you decide to get into that? And then how did you like end up with the Yankees? Because that kind of propelled you into a lot of different opportunities as well. And I remember even like your reputation like basically preceded you because I remember like being at IMG and someone was like, oh yeah, Manny's coming. He worked at the Yankees. He's gonna be great. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know who this Manny is, but
Yeah,
obviously
I
he's
mean,
gonna work out.
I'm glad people are able to say that. So I think that's more a reflection of my work. But in regards for my background in general, traditionally I was going to college for sports medicine. I graduated back in 2013 from Illinois State University. But I didn't know what athletic training was until I started double majoring in physical therapy and sports medicine. And eventually, I got out of physical therapy because of one of the classes I didn't like. But my motivation to get into medicine was because I love sports, and my parents are both from the medical field. So my dad's a psychiatrist, my mom's a nurse. They wanted me to go in the medical field. I wanted to work in sports, so I kind of met them halfway. But same perception too. Like, I didn't really know what athletic training was until I first got into it. So then I realized it's with like the higher levels, you get to be a part of great organizations. You know, you're working with something that's bigger than yourself. That's always been my big motivation and biggest factor into just staying and grinding throughout almost the last 10 years in athletic training. So originally, after I graduated from Illinois State, I went to the University of South Florida. I graduated in 2015 for my master's. That's where I live now. Then after that, I worked a seasonal internship with the Buccaneers. So that kept me into, my original goal was always professional football. And I actually, when I was starting my internship, I didn't get any calls when I was applying for jobs. I applied for at least like 20 to 30 college jobs, and I didn't get one peep. Yeah, so I was lucky that I did work a baseball internship with the Blue Jays during my undergrad. So as soon as the Buccaneers internship was over, the Yankees called from across the street, and they said they were looking for someone. So yeah, I was a quick fix. I showed up, and then next you know, I was there for 4.5 years. I started working full-time baseball from February to September, and I was lucky enough to keep my relationships with my mentors with the Buccaneers to work home games since 2014 to 2020. So as soon as baseball was over, I hopped right into football. So it was kind of nonstop grinding. And after that, eventually, once COVID hit, I started easing out of baseball, ran into the WNBA, and then slowly made my way back into the XFL here. So it's been a for sure.
Yeah. This CXC. Have you worked with the Yankees pitchers? I don't know if you can't say like specifically who, but I mean you work with all the
Pretty
team
much.
members, I'm sure.
For like the insight, yeah, there's some big names that are with like the major league group now that I had when they were young athletes who have worked their way up into the minor or all the way up to the majors. I can't dive into like any like specific names, but anyone who is through that organization, like I was able to meet and had, you know, a great opportunity to work with them and work with them hand in hand.
Yeah. I want to go back to that in a second, but I think like something that is a little hard, and tell me if you totally disagree, but the professional level positions, like for an athletic trainer or like medical staff or whatever, it's it's challenging to get into like professional sports. Like you really have to like grind at it and like reach out to so many different contacts and like constantly be going after it and make it your priority and kind of just make it your only option.
Yeah,
Would you say that's true or
especially after
no?
the first couple of years after getting your feet wet and like understanding all the clinical stuff, to get the higher end jobs like this is like, I would say if it's all about networking. I think the athletic training world itself, there might be around 40,000 or so athletic trainers. So it's a small knit kind of world. And especially for like positions I'm in now or other for the NFL, stuff like that, they really work within their own network. They go through word of mouth before make a posting on Indeed or LinkedIn, looking for like an assistant spot. So it's very highly competitive so for example, my goal was always to work with football like in Tampa, and out of all the colleges that I think that were there, I think there was University of South Florida. We'll just talk the state of Florida. You have FIU, University of Miami, you got FAMU, you got Florida State, you got University of South Florida, you got UCF. So you got about like 6 or 7 colleges there. And honestly, they only usually have maybe 4 to 6 athletic trainers tops per staff. And those are all in separate cities. So for like Tampa, you know, there's only 4 or 5 spots you can really go for. That's at USF, at the Bucks. Right. And they have 4 full-time staff too. So you got 8 spots to go for, and it's so hard.
Well, I don't even think that you can really say it as 8 spots because I remember now, like all the memories are coming back from the WNBA. I remember and maybe this was like one of the last times that I saw you. Like, I remember you saying that for the Yankees, like, I people don't move from those positions. Like the one guy that you had replaced, um, had been there forever. Like, I don't remember how many years the other athletic trainers were there for, but you basically said like those jobs don't come about and you just got lucky and like had the right connections and obviously
Yeah,
the knowledge and all that
I
kind of
think
stuff as well.
my 5 years with the Yankees were absolutely awesome. I think at that time there was just a lot of good athletic trainers that were there. And obviously, for the tricky part about the minors is like for you to you have to climb your way up, and usually it takes like 10 to 15 years per athletic trainer to like, build your way up. And I've worked with so many good athletic trainers at that time, so it's very uncommon for like someone like myself to go from like a rookie ball team to the big leagues. Usually people have to spend 15 plus years. My buddy Darren, who was with the Yankees for 30 years, he was there in AAA for 30 years. Um, you know,
Wow.
had a long career. He
It's a
just
long
recently
career. That's
retired too.
awesome though.
But I think that's a reflection of just not wanting to leave because like it's a great organization to work for, and they didn't want to go anywhere else. And at least at the timing when I was there, um, like I said, it's a different kind of grind versus football. It was a very good experience overall.
Yeah. What do you think's like going from different teams, like, and even different sports? Is there a commonality that like you have learned kind of through all that, or is it all different and you're
I
like
wouldn't
starting
say
completely
I
over
wouldn't
each
say
time?
starting over each time. Honestly, I think you have in sports you see every type of personality you can think of, especially with football and baseball. Like
Mhm.
I've learned work with a lot of great athletes and kids, but like they're all here to have fun, and a lot of them are clowns. And whether it be football, baseball, hockey, all that stuff, like a lot of personalities are the same, but your approaches to how you take care of injuries and the athletes are totally different. Versus, let's say you have an ankle sprain with one athlete who was a first round, draft picked in the minors, from high school, and you have a starting defensive tackle for like the Bucks who has the exact same ankle sprain, like a grade one, a mild one. Your approach, because baseball players play every single day, like that mild ankle sprain could take 4 to 6 weeks versus in football with the guy who you only play once a week. Hey, I'm gonna rehab him and be very proactive and aggressive with his rehab so he could play that week. And it's definitely kind of a grind in that kind of aspect where I really had to learn how first learned a very aggressive approach to rehab, and then I went into baseball and it was a complete 180 where you had to go the conservative route and be like, hey, you need to get this guy right so they can perform for 2 weeks straight, no problem. So same fun personalities, but huge differences in approaches in how you take care of the athletes.
Do you think that that also depends on what ortho surgeon that they're working with? Because I know even from the contracts that I've done, like even just now, like I grew up actually in Illinois. I don't know if you grew up in Illinois. I grew up
I'm from
outside of
Chicago.
Chicago. What? Okay. I'm from
Yeah,
do you know
you're
like by
like
Schaumburg
40
area?
minutes north of me. You're like by the airport. You're by like O'Hare.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a little bit outside of there. But anyways, I grew up over there and then when I worked sports med out there, the surgeon I was with, his approach is very different than the surgeons that I work with now in California. And I'm out here closer to like Stanford and, UCSF and stuff like that. So, and each surgeon is a little bit different. So, do you think that like being aggressive in certain areas like depends on how the surgeon is in general, or do you think it's just kind of the
I think
nature
it
of the
has a little
sport
bit
that you're
more to
working
do
with?
with like the nature of the sport. especially with the sports doctors or orthopedic physicians I've worked with, they have a pretty good understanding of what the demands of are the athletes versus like a traditional like orthopedic surgeon. They might get, at least at this
Mm-hmm.
level, they understand that for business to run in these guys, you have to look at them as investments. You know, you have to put them on the field so they're able to do their thing and, you know, promote the business side, you know, bringing in tickets and fans and stuff to these bases. And people want to see these people. So I think it has to do more with the nature of the sport and what the athlete is able to handle. I'm not saying I'm super aggressive with everything with like the rehab approach, but we're going to do what we can in this kind of setting, especially if they're only playing, at least in the XFL here, they're only playing, you know, once a week for 10 weeks straight. Like we got to get them out there.
Mm-hmm. What do you think makes a good athletic trainer? Like what kind of characteristics?
Um, I always, let's see. Well, at first I always thought it was all your clinical skills, knowing everything from like an orthopedic background and, you know, knowing how to tape an ankle the best, knowing how to do a perfect eval, or knowing everything about the body. But I think the most successful athletic trainers really have a great heart, great work ethic, and just like they're very, very, very personable. Um, I take a lot of pride within myself in regards to how I take my athletes. Like I want them to view me as like, hey, like this guy, this guy's gonna figure it out. Like this guy was reliable. So I think what makes me a good athletic trainer is just taking a lot of pride in things you do and just doing what you can for your athletes. Really, like I said, it's not an 8 to 5 job. Like these are some long hours, you know. Um, like for example, today I'm at the office now. It's been about like a 12-hour day just to kind of crank things out.
Wow.
Um, but
Yeah.
overall, it's just you got to have a passion for helping people. You got to have fun with everything that you do. But you also have to be cognizant and like organized. And you know what? Like we're gonna get all our stuff done from a clinical standpoint, an admin standpoint, obviously paperwork and stuff like that. But just knowing how to have a good sense of work-life balance, and you know, really, just really knowing that you're just making every decision that you make on a daily, you make a direct impact on that athlete's, you know, career, and you see it every week. So that's a big thing. Just taking a lot of
Yeah.
pride in the things you do. Sure.
Can I add two more things? And you tell me if you agree or disagree. So one, I think the athletic trainer is really a part of the team. Like you have to be able to like you're building that trust and that confidence within you. Like they're going to be confident within you, but they're also like viewing you as part of the team. And I think establishing that kind of relationship is important. And then the other thing that I will say that I noticed, like just from athletic trainers that even like from my position that I kind of trust and rely on more is ones that I know even when they're in a stressful situation, they handle things in a calm manner and they're about solving the problem instead of like letting their emotions
Yeah,
take
that's
over.
huge. I mean, there's some crazy scenarios. I think, I mean, this happened recently, but the Damar Hamlin situation with the Buffalo Bills, you know, like, yeah, like, yeah, like the
Right.
doctors and the
That's
athletic trainers. I don't think a
yeah.
lot of people knew what athletic trainers did, but they were the ones, the first responders on the scene to take care of that guy. And underneath the direction of the physicians as well, like they all worked as a great unit and to make things happen, or obviously to save his life and be proactive. But it takes a lot of, it's a high pressure situation kind of job where, you know, I'm responsible for 51, you know, professional athletes. At one point even with working with the Buccaneers, I was responsible, and also I was a small piece of it, but I was responsible for a $220 million payroll worth of athletes. Yeah,
Oh wow, yeah. That's a different
yeah,
way to
like
look at
that's
it. I didn't even
what
think
those
about it
guys
that
are.
way.
That's what you're taking care of, these investments, like these people. So it takes a lot over time. Um, from a confidence standpoint and exposure standpoint, just be like, hey, second nature, like this is how I need to break down this process, whether it be CPR or like spine boarding or anything from emergency standpoint. It just kind of becomes second nature, and you really have to adopt this mindset that, you know, I need to have the composure of 51 plus athletes and staff and other people including their families as well, to handle the situation correctly. And over time, I mean, when it becomes to that kind of situation, now it's just second nature. We got a job to do. We gotta save a life. We gotta tape an ankle. We gotta put on a Band-Aid. Like, we know how to do it.
Yeah. Is there ever a time, because like when I've noticed this too, like when you said big personalities, I think that's very true. And then like you're balancing a lot of different factors. Like when you're working at a high school level, and I think this starts even in college level, especially now that they changed kind of the guidelines in terms of paid athletes for collegiate levels, like you have the athlete you have to take care of, but then you see the bigger picture. Like you have to get them ready for the game. There's a lot of money that's involved with it. Sometimes I prefer not to personally. Sometimes there's agents that try to get involved, like those people I try not to work with. So like there's a lot of different factors and a lot of different pressure points. Is there ever a time that, like, yes, there is a game going to happen and there's a lot of money riding on it, and that person has a contract, but you have to go against like what other people are telling you because of just like your own clinical judgment?
There's a lot of those situations. I would say I've seen a good chunk of them at the NFL level. But the biggest thing that you have to put at the side is that we are in a very unique position on the daily. We're responsible for observing and watching and taking care of these athletes. And that includes like emotional, mental well-being, like psychological well-being, and physical well-being. So I think the big thing is that, like, yeah, there may be some pressures for athletes to do certain things, but I'm not going to put someone out there that's going to put them at risk for themselves. A high intensity game like football where it's full contact, like once you're between those lines, there's nowhere to hide. Like you can't be just like hiding an injury or pushing somewhere out. So we're very aware, or athletic trainers need to be very aware of, the health of the athlete, no matter what comes first. And you really have to take your time working with these athletes to develop your gut instinct, like just body language. Like this person may be saying one thing, but you might check your exam, or you just see them kind of being like, yeah, I'm okay. But other days they may be this like happy-go-lucky person all the time. Maybe there's a hunch. There's like, okay, maybe something's off. So
yeah. I love that you said that. I think that was like the hardest thing for me transitioning into like being a nurse to a nurse practitioner, was like, no matter what, even if you don't have like a quote unquote reason, always trust your gut. Like don't go against your gut, because like there's certain things that you're picking up on that maybe you can't quite identify, but like it's there for a reason. It's there telling you that for a reason.
Yeah.
So I think that's so important.
And adding on to that as well, at this level too, like we are working with workers' comp athletes, and this is their career.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And every decision that they make or injury that they go through, like my job is on the line. So you have to be aware from like that standpoint, like, okay, like of course, like I know you need to take care of this, but you also realize like when you really care for your athletes, like you want them to succeed. And sometimes you might have to be like, devil's advocate or the bearer of bad news, but like, hey, like we got to pump the brakes. Like you have to be like, I'm not liking what I'm seeing, like, and like the coaches in general, they have to respect that decision. And no matter what, even if they're able to handle something, like you just have to own it. But nothing that really teaches that kind of instinct or gut versus just like exposure and experience.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think I am CXC 17. Are you still working during the off season? I feel like you're always working. You're always like going from one thing to
this
another.
Off season, which is pretty cool about this organization. So the league itself now, knock on wood, goes through everything smooth. The championship will be in late, I believe, second week of May. And after that, off season starts. So we'll still have responsibilities in regards to taking care of like the athletes who need like follow-up surgeries, rehab at home, and organize that. But for the most part, after that, like from middle of May to January next year, besides like some like Zoom calls or stuff like that, like we are off. And for me being a full-time athletic trainer, I've always picked up PRN work, or if people are not familiar with that, it's just as needed work, like contract work on the side where you could create a little bit more like money for yourself. So for me, I'll tell you as soon as I get back, I'll go on a little vacation, but I'm going to pick up another high school, and I'm going to create some flexibility for my hours. I think that's a very unique aspect of this kind of setting here that I'm definitely looking for. But I will be working, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So I think there's so much other stuff in between that we could talk about, but I think we like kind of bring it up to now. So just a couple things. So you're with the XFL now, which is a minor league. I mean, they are getting paid. So like professional football league. Yeah. And it was bought out by Dwayne Johnson, you said about a year ago, and Danny Garcia, which I read is his ex-wife.
That's their business.
Is that right? Which is interesting. Wow. She seems awesome. And then like just from a stat position, like from high school, I saw it from high school to college, 6.5 of those high school players will play college football. And then from football to NFL, only about 1.2% of players get drafted into the NFL. And some of those players are going to have a very short career. Like, a 4-year career is actually pretty good.
That's the average.
Yeah. I didn't know that was the average, but I remember talking to my aunt about this, and she's like, only 4 years? And I was like, that's pretty good. So what is that like? How did you get involved with the XFL, and what has that been like? Because that's totally different than professional football, and it's like an ever-changing, evolving kind of organization.
I think the coolest part about getting into this setting is that I originally I was offered a job in the USFL for a contract this past March, and I was able to network with some of the athletic trainers there and realized XFL was coming in the fall, so I was lucky enough to position. But I think what's really cool about this league is that it's really identified like there is a need for spring football or another platform for these other athletes to keep on competing. Training camps, when people are drafted, even if you're drafted, it doesn't mean that you're going to make a team. Like they go from 90 people to 53, plus some people on practice squad. So at that time, you're telling 30, 40 plus athletes that, hey, like, sorry, but we don't have a spot for you. And these are NFL capable and professional football capable athletes that could compete at a very high level. It was just identified that, for this team that was not the fit. So I think it's been identified like, hey, there's a plethora of these athletes that are still ready to go. And now in regards to spring football at this time, it's usually baseball and a couple other sports and some spring football. But I think this league has identified like, hey, this is another platform that the XFL and NFL can work hand in hand and give these guys another opportunity, including myself, to keep working and another way for these guys to showcase their skills and their attributes and all that stuff. So it's been really.
So I am excited about this league. I mean, yes, like to get to the NFL, like that's amazing. And definitely those guys work hard and you have to be talented and stuff like that. One thing that I learned about the WNBA, so like women in the WNBA, they play basically all year round. So like when they finish their season, like you guys had to send them internationally so that way they could play in a different country essentially. And their pay difference between NBA to a WNBA is like strikingly different. Like it's like crazy different. And in a lot of ways, obviously, I don't think that's justified, and I think that they should be paid more. But it also speaks to the point that the athletes that are in the WNBA, like they're truly passionate about what they do, and like they love it in and out, and they are just 100% committed to it. And I think the XFL, obviously they're not women, I'm not saying that, but like the XFL, they are getting paid, but like the pay that I looked at, it's not like NFL pay. Like it's a lot different in terms of the amount. And these guys have also been like some of them rejected from the NFL and haven't been drafted. And so like their drive and their motivation and their commitment to be where they are, I think is like at least what I can see is really, really like there.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
it's
It's
exciting to see that.
like obviously this is trying to build itself. Obviously, you're trying to get through the season and stuff like that. It's a great platform for all these guys to showcase their skills. And even though like they may not, like I said, like NFL pay might be like a little bit different and stuff like that. I don't really think so much about the money, but it's just like no one. It's so hard besides like the CFL or like the indoor like arena leagues. It's very hard to build this kind of league and build a platform for these guys to go ahead and do their thing. So I think it's pretty unprecedented, like, and working with so many great athletic trainers and other people with the staff here, you know. I know this league's going to be very successful forward. That's why I wanted to be a part of it because I love the idea that these athletes are, what's very unique is that these athletes, you know, they were told, like, for the most part, like, at some point, I would say 90% of this league were all, like, either drafted or signed with an NFL team. And now this is another chance for them to be like, hey, this is what I'm about. Everyone's got that chip on their shoulder. Yeah, even DJ talked about it. We had an opening. Yeah,
DJ, you mean like Dwayne Jackson?
So, yeah, DJ said like he talked about like how he was cut when he was playing, like when he was building up in the CFL, and he's always had a chip on his shoulder too. So now it's this league about, you know, building like a chance for like excellence and opportunity. So it's a whole new platform for these guys to be seen, and it's going to be really exciting. There's going to be a lot of high level football that are going to be played. I'm just reading my buddy Josh's comments. He's one of my athletes here too. He's hilarious. Yeah. So.
Oh, he is.
What
is
it's
he
not
saying?
a janitor's
closet.
What do you mean? I was just looking at it. It's one of it's an office.
Wait, you're
in
a janitor's closet or where?
But regardless, but for example, for like an athlete like Josh too, you know, like this is a huge platform opportunity for people to see what's going on. You know, like you only get for a training camp, sometimes it's only like a 5-6 week interview and that's it. And you're like, no, when people watch the NFL or games on TV, they just see what's on there on Sunday. Like these guys, all these guys are like incredible athletes, and you know, this is just a new way for them to be seen in an area that hasn't been like established or like, you know, set. Like, you know, I could definitely see this league really taking care over like the idea of like spring football, and you know, being a consistent portion of like what people are viewing for sports and entertainment.
So you said, so this is like kind of the way that it's working out, because how many teams are there? Okay, so there's, you know, like smaller amount of teams, and then you said it's like condensed more, correct, into the
actually
season?
What's going on here in our hub in the XFL, we're all here in Arlington and Dallas and spread out in different kind of areas where we're all sharing 4 different sites for our practice facilities. And we actually, the season itself is like pretty much like a road trip every game. For example, our home opener is in DC and we're playing Seattle this Sunday night. So both of us, we're all flying together out to DC to play that game, and then we're coming back. But we're all using the same facilities here to offset obviously some costs for different kind of hubs in different cities for travel and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And then you said you go to Vegas after that?
My schedule for coming up, I believe we're going to DC for our home opener. Then the following weekend, we're going to Vegas. Come back to DC to play St. Louis. And then I forget if we're still back at home, but then after that, week 5, we go to St. Louis. So the other teams, and sorry if I forget some of them, it's going to be Arlington, Houston, San Antonio, Orlando, DC, Las Vegas, Seattle, and I'm definitely forgetting one more. I think that was 7. But regardless, yeah, there's 8 teams that we're all like traveling to. So it's definitely exciting. It's definitely legit.
And is it always going to be on Sunday?
All the games are
is the games kind of like
ESPN,
all over?
or ESPN FX from Sunday through Monday, starting this weekend. So the 18th, is this
Okay.
Saturday is when we're going to start, and then from here on out for the next 10 weeks all the way until May, there'll be football on TV.
That's awesome. And it's on all
Yes.
the major networks too, which will be good for everyone to be able to see. What do you think, like you've worked with so many different teams in different sports and coaches, and you said like, everyone, just different positions, even I'm sure like media you've kind of talked to and whatever. Like, what do you think makes one like a good characteristics that make a good athlete for you to work with, and then like two, someone for you to work with within the team, like characteristics that make
I
that a
think the
good person to
biggest
work
thing
with.
with everyone that's coming in is just being open-minded and just trying to be coachable. And I think what makes it really easy at this kind of setting is that people aren't here because they think they've made it. Like people have their dreams, and DJ openly talks about like, hey, if you want to go to the NFL, like go to the NFL and go back and pursue your dreams. If not, like we will have a spot for you. Um, so sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Um,
It's
yeah,
late
it's
for
a little late.
you, I'm sorry. Just like what makes a good person to work with? Like, is there like a good coach, a good assistant coach, a good like a player? Like, are there certain characteristics that you've noticed is like
Just
across the board?
or going back to it now, remember, just being open-minded and coachable. Like it's kind of like leaving your credentials at the door. Like people come here to work
Mhm.
because like they're trying to get to a higher level, and everyone comes in here open-minded, ready to improve themselves. A lot of my athletes come up to me and just like, hey, like, what can I work on today? What can I improve today? Different kind of levels, even NFL, when some athletes have made it, like they're good. Like they know their routine. Um, they know what works and what doesn't work, but guys here are hungry and they want to, they have,
That's what I'm like so excited about. Like,
they're
I can
hungry to
already
keep
see it. I'm like, this
like
is gonna be
working and figure out
awesome.
different things, to number one, play the sport, but you have to realize too, like this is what they're doing to provide for their families, so it's a
Mhm.
huge, huge deal because, they take a lot of pride with it, and they're not able to play on the field, like that's taken away from like things at home. So there's a lot of things. I would say being coachable, being open-minded, and being a good learner, you know, well, it definitely makes a good mindset for an athlete.
Mhm. And then in terms of longevity, like for, if it's weightlifting or because, I weightlift a lot, but for for me personally, selfishly, but just like in general, if you're like any kind of sport that you're doing, are there certain things that you think are good to implement for longevity and for
Sure.
prevention of
I think the
injuries?
biggest thing is just identifying, and we talked about this a little bit before. So, what your immediate short-term, um, like middle and long-term goals are. Whether you want to be big and strong, you want to be just like a little bit more fit, or like just have like a better physique. You want to work at a high level. I think that's the biggest thing that you want to kind of figure out, and that's where it kind of tailor makes your workouts to what's going on. Avid bodybuilding for sure.
Mhm.
I definitely work out close to 4 to 5 times a week, and also being a strength coach as well. I think the big things that kind of go hand in hand with it is just understanding like what, and this is being like an anatomy and like sports medicine nerd, but like understanding like what you are doing to your body to get the results that you need. So if you are a long-term like runner and stuff like that, like you may not want to lift like heavy weights because that's just heavier weight for you to do, and those muscles are better. The muscles that you should be training are more for endurance, so you don't need to overload them with like heavy weights. You don't need to be doing 400 power squat to be
Mhm.
like a good runner. That might be actually be more detrimental on your bones when you're running for like a triathlon, or 13 miles or 26 miles. So just understanding, um, I guess, the dynamics of the sport or role that you're trying to put yourself in. That's a big thing, is especially with rehabs too. I always have to gauge where my athletes are at, like where they're feeling like tight or sore or stuff like that. Like I want to be able to gauge it what they want to do, or what they are feeling, and how am I going to get them into that direction. So big thing is just understanding what you're trying to do for your body, and making sure you're doing everything with right form and doing things safely and not doing anything too over the top. I'm a big form guy. A lot of guys, at least for bodybuilding for me, I always like to lift heavy, but I didn't have the greatest form. And I think that's the big thing with over time. Even though you might see big videos of people doing like crazy lifts or like lifting like weird like fitness equipment on TikTok or stuff like that, it might look funny, but like if you hurt yourself like that, like that's really going to set you back in regards to what your goals are. So if you're if you're trying to get big,
Sure.
do everything 3 sets of 10, eat a bunch of carbs, make sure like you're eating enough calories to make sure that you're getting your muscle. If you're trying to lean out, like the big thing there is just cut off like 500 calories a day. That's a pound a week, from a healthy standpoint. I kind of went a little bit all over the place with that.
That's okay. I think that's good. I know it's like hard. I can see like just sometimes when you're like, well, I could talk about this, I could talk about this. There's so many different factors to it and it depends on sport to sport, especially like when you said running, like, yeah, gravity has an effect on all of us and our joints as general. So like we're all going to get wear and tear from our joints just by being on Earth. But definitely if you're heavier set and then you're running, that impact is creating more of trauma to
Yeah,
your knees or joints or whatever it is. So since like you've worked with all these pro athletes, is there any like secret sauce that people use like glucosamine or like I don't know, turmeric or something that like we can get at the drugstore, like at Walgreens or
yeah.
something, and it's gonna make us a pro athlete?
I wouldn't say there's an actual vitamin or a secret sauce that makes a pro athlete, but I think a lot of it has to do is just kind of grinding and just like making small little adjustments to like what your goals are, whether it be you're an athlete or an athletic trainer. But at the end of the day, you gotta put in the work. You gotta grind and make yourself as specialized as you can and work at your craft. There's no real secret sauce about it, but I would say once you get to those high levels, I think the biggest thing is just maybe not from a fitness standpoint, but just keep working hard and stay hungry. You gotta stay hungry. Right, always.
That's great. Okay, is there anything you wanted to add? I feel like we talked about a lot of good
I think the
things.
biggest thing from like an athletic training standpoint that people don't really kind of know about is that it's such a fun and cool job. People don't really understand it. They just kind of think we're holding water on TV. But I could tell you, like, I mean, that's actually the gift of the job. Like, we work hard enough to make sure our athletes are ready. So like, we are just ready from a hydration standpoint to take care of their basic needs. And that's almost our reward. We have the best seats in the house to watch these guys compete.
I am so jealous. Like getting like field, you're on the field getting to watch the game or you're courtside getting to watch the game. Like
Yeah, definitely.
that
And
just must be
you just,
unbelievable.
especially with just getting to know the guys over time, like it's like I'm a father of 51. Like you're proud of every person, no matter like what they're doing, and like you take in stride like that. Like, hey, like what other ways can I think of to make sure like this guy is gonna, put his best foot forward when it comes to Sunday and stuff like that. But yeah, I really would love to just promote the idea that like athletic trainers are highly specialized healthcare professionals. They're not someone that you're gonna find at the gym who's just gonna go over like general health and wellness. Like we're very easygoing, like loving, very caring people who will go out limb for limb to make sure that like the people that we're taking care of are in the best shape of their life and they're as healthy as possible. So there's a lot of pride that kind of goes along with it, and it's one of the best jobs like in the world, hands down.
That's awesome. I love that you say that. What's your social media account, Instagram
It's Manny
handle,
Fresh.
in case anyone wants to follow you?
I had to add an extra H to that. N because there's like a Manny Fresh who's a world famous producer. That's not how you actually spell my name, like Mannie, but that's what I do for at least for IG. But I can type it in so everyone else could have it. But yeah, give me a follow. Ready for it.
And then just we hadn't talked about this before, so I'm not sure if you're doing this, but like in your off season or even in the season, do you work with any athletes like one-on-one, or do you take on athletes like in your spare time as like more kind
Um,
of like on the
Not so
side?
much recently. I mean, I'd say some old athletes that I used to have reached out for like any like personal tidbits, so I've made like good relationships along the way. But I would love to build myself from that platform later on to be able to help those athletes like on the side farther down the road. But for the most part, of my off season, I'm still just doing just local coverage over in the Tampa area. My own dream, honestly, would be, to be like an athletic training consultant down the line, just helping out with like sports medicine, just like the administration stuff, getting things set up, whether it be like things behind the scene, like coordinating different kind of, like EMS, athletic trainers for different events, showcases, making sure like everything from a health standpoint is taken care of. But before that, I would love to definitely get a Super Bowl ring, and then yeah,
That would
that's always
be
been the goal. At one point,
amazing.
it was a World Series ring and a Super Bowl ring, and then after that, I retire and go teach, and I still plan on it. So got to pass the knowledge along.
Yeah. Well, I definitely will be following your journey along the way. I can't wait
Yeah.
to see the ring.
So
It'd be great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, your time and just giving me
yeah,
so
it's been
much knowledge
awesome,
and
Rach.
catching
Thanks for
up.
having
It's been
me.
great.
Love to do this again. Sure.
Of course. Yes,
Awesome.
would
See ya.
love to. I'll see you later.